The town of Antioquia sat beneath the weight of history, its cobbled streets whispering tales of valor and betrayal. However, beneath its serene facade lay a darkness tethered to the past, an unsettling threat hidden within the ancient tunnels that crisscross the earth like a web, remnants of the Crusades. On an otherwise ordinary morning, unsettling rumors began to ripple through the town, unsettling what little peace existed. People spoke in hushed tones of strange sounds echoing from the depths below, unearthly groans, sharp echoes, and chilling wails that sliced through the silence of the night. Residents exchanged fearful glances, their imaginations igniting at the prospect of supernatural horrors lurking beneath their feet. Among these townsfolk was Lucas, a young historian whose fascination with the mystery of Antioquia bordered on obsession. He had spent countless nights poring over dusty tomes, uncovering fragments of the town's tumultuous past, seeking to connect the dots between its illustrious history and the growing disquiet that now clouded its present. As he heard the latest whispers of the inexplicable sounds from the tunnels, a sense of both dread and irresistible curiosity washed over him. What could possibly lie within those confines? Were the legends of demons and curses more than mere stories spun by anxious minds? Lucas couldn't help but feel compelled to investigate for himself. That night, as shadows deepened and the air turned biting cold, he made his way to the entrance of the tunnels, a gaping maw at the base of a steep hillside. The entrance was barely illuminated by a flickering lantern that cast long shadows, twisting and distorting the rocky walls. As he stepped inside, the scent of damp earth and decay enveloped him. The dark tunnel stretched ahead like a serpent, consuming the light and trapping his breath in a snare of trepidation. In that moment, he questioned his choice. Is it wise to delve into the heart of darkness? What if the tales were true? Perhaps it would be better to turn back, to leave the secrets buried in the shadows. Yet the thought of uncovering something extraordinary urged him forward. As Lucas descended deeper, he remembered the warning he had received from a local elder. A few had ventured into the depths, never to return. Those unfortunate souls became cursed, lost to the whispers of the past that echoed in the abyss. Could he be one of them? But his passion for history overrode his fear. The desire to understand what lay beneath outweighed the growing urgency to escape the tightening grip of the darkness. So he pressed on, armed with nothing but his determination and a flickering flame that lit only the next step ahead. He paused when he stumbled upon the first piece of ancient graffiti etched into the stone walls, a chaotic combination of symbols and slashes that felt alive, as if they were watching him. The markings seemed to pulsate with a hidden energy, a testament to the unknown mysteries. Goosebumps crept across his skin, and a chill ran down his spine as he deciphered the words that stood out. They came in search of power, but were lost to the abyss. What power? What happened to those who sought it? Questions spun in his mind like wildfires, each one igniting another. As he ventured further into the labyrinth, the air grew thicker, saturated with an oppressive silence that felt deafening. He strained his ears and caught a distant echo, a sound unlike any he had ever heard before, a blend of anguish and despair that chilled him to the bone. It resonated through the tunnel, creeping into his senses like a cold tide washing over him. Huddling against the damp wall, he wrestled with the urge to turn back, to abandon his quest for the sake of his sanity. But curiosity is a relentless beast. It gnaws and claws until it is satisfied. Overwhelmed by his need to know, Lucas pressed onward, gaining confidence with each step as he called out into the void, every word slipping into the depths without answer. Yet, deep down, he pondered, was he truly alone in this ghastly place? There were tales of watchers who roamed the shadows, observing and waiting for the right moment to unleash their wrath. A part of him felt a twinge of regret for not heeding the warnings of those who knew the history better than he did. He had uncovered tales of bravery and honor, of battles fought and won, never fully grasping the scarier elements of those stories, the hungry spirits and demons that lay in restless slumber. In search of truth and adventure, he had willingly crossed the threshold into a world that cradled their malevolence. As he continued deeper, he realized that the horrors spoken of weren't mere folklore. They had roots in reality, entwined with the dark legacies of the past. With every stride into the foreboding darkness, he inched closer to confronting the terrors that had lain dormant for centuries, awakening a force that should have remained buried in the shadows. While darkness loomed heavily around him, he couldn't help but question the essence of the human spirit. Why do we seek out what frightens us? What compels us to confront the unknown, even when we are aware of the dangers? In that haunting moment, as dread seeped into the marrow of his bones, Lucas knew one thing. The journey into the tunnels of Antioquia would forever change him, for better or worse. What awaited him in the depths was not just a test of courage, but a reflection of the darkest corners of the human psyche, a battle between the familiar and the terrifying that transcended time and reality, waiting to be unearthed. As the echoes of his footsteps faded and darkness closed around him like a shroud, Lucas inhaled deeply, summoning the last vestiges of his resolve. With a heart pounding like the deeper Lucas wandered into the tunnels, the more he felt an unseen presence looming around him. The oppressive silence shifted to an unsettling hum, a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very stones of the tunnel. It felt as though the walls themselves were alive, whispering secrets that had languished in the dark for centuries. Each step was a brush against the unknown, and he found himself increasingly aware of the primal instinct to flee. But the historian within him pressed on, driven by a thirst for knowledge that outweighed his rising terror. As he turned a corner, Lucas stumbled upon a room that opened up before him like a hidden cavern. A chapel of sorts, adorned with faded murals that depicted scenes from long-forgotten battles. The colors, muted by time, seemed to flicker in the light of his lantern. He traced a finger over the depictions of armored knights, their visages locked in grim expressions, battling with ethereal figures that twisted away from the gaze. It was a stark reminder of the brutality that had taken place in these very grounds. But there, in the center of the mural, lay a striking image that sent chills down his spine. A dark figure, towering and monstrous, clutching a sword inscribed with strange runes, surrounded by a swirling vortex of shadows. This was no ordinary warrior. It was a demon. Why had these ancient warriors resorted to such desperate measures during the Crusades? What force had compelled them to invoke the powers that this mural suggested? His heart raced as he pieced together the chilling possibilities. What if these tunnels were not just a refuge for the weary soldiers, but a gateway to something far more sinister? The legend of the cursed demon whispered in the tidings of the residents now haunted Lucas's thoughts. What power was trapped here, waiting to be unleashed again? In the shadows, unease thrummed through the air. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Lucas turned sharply, the lantern light illuminating a tangle of fearsome shadows. For a fleeting instant, he swore he saw faces, twisted, anguished faces that flitted between the flickering light and the enveloping darkness. He blinked, and they vanished like smoke, leaving behind nothing but the echo of silent screams that reverberated in his mind. Uncertain and breathless, Lucas took a step back. What was this place? Were these the tormented souls of those who had been lost to the malevolence that dwelled here? Compelled to uncover more, he hastily scoured the room for any artifacts or texts that could shed light on this dark history. His fingers brushed over cracked leather-bound books strewn across the cold stone floor, the pages yellowed and delicately fragile. One particular tome appeared less worn, its cover embossed with an ornate design that seemed to shimmer, captivating his gaze. He knelt and carefully pried it open, revealing ancient incantations and grim illustrations that pulsated with a life of their own. As he read the words penned in an elegant but eerie script, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. The text spoke of rituals to summon dark forces, detailed accounts of how warriors had bargained with demons to gain strength in battle. The whispers of the past painted a picture of desperation. Men, faced with insurmountable odds, turning to the very evil they believed they could control. But the text also warned of consequences, of costs that far outweighed any potential gain. The demons would grant power, Yes, but they would demand payment in blood, soul, and loyalty. Lucas's blood ran cold as he realized that the very powers drawn from the darkness might be what had awakened the wrathful spirits he sensed lurking in the corners of the tunnels. Had the rituals forged a bond that could never be broken? Was the malevolence still waiting, bound to these hollowed stones, thirsting for freedom? These revelations felt like an anchor pulling him deeper into despair. The truth was horrifying. It was not merely the echoes of history that haunted these passages. It was the palpable essence of evil itself, a force woven into the very fabric of Antioquia. Suddenly, a sudden rush of cold air rushed past him, and the lantern flickered violently, casting dancing shadows that warped around him like living beings. Lucas stumbled back, his heart racing wildly as he felt the atmosphere shift, becoming thick with malice. Panic surged through him as he realized he was not alone. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony melding with the shadows. He felt their presence. They were there, watching, waiting. What do they want? Was he intruding on their eternal rest, awakening a hunger that had lain dormant for centuries? As the shadows seemed to converge around him, Lucas fought against the rising tide of panic. He sought to rationalize what was happening. A trick of the light, perhaps, or the frail boundaries of his own mind collapsing under the weight of fear. Yet every instinct screamed at him to flee, to turn back and seal the depths of darkness once and for all. But he couldn't ignore the drive for answers, for understanding. Even as terror clawed at his heart, a part of him realized the only way to face this evil was to confront it head-on. Gathering his resolve, Lucas prepared to delve deeper into the abyss, determined to illuminate the truths hidden within these haunted tunnels. The grim shadows became a siren call, luring him further into their grasp. As the weight of history pressed on his shoulders, he felt an unsettling sense of purpose surge within him. He had unwittingly crossed the threshold of darkness. The question was no longer about whether he should turn back, but rather, what horrors awaited him in the lineage of anguish that thrived in the tunnels of Antioquia? All that endless uncertainty hung in the air, thick and oppressive, binding him to the past while beckoning him toward an unknown future. As Lucas pressed deeper into the chilling silence of the tunnels, the ominous energy surrounding him intensified. With every step he took, the dark intent that loitered in the shadows grew more palpable, coiling around him like a serpent ready to strike. He was a solitary figure in a universe of primordial fear, a light flickering against the vast, encroaching dark where history had confined unspeakable horrors. The tunnel twisted and turned, and as he moved, the air thickened with an unnameable dread that gnawed at the edges of his sanity. Then, without warning, the whispering shadows grew silent, as if they were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Lucas stopped in his tracks, heart pounding in his chest, listening to the hollow stillness. It felt like the eye of a storm, a moment of chilling calm before chaos erupted. That very silence screamed to him, raising the hairs on the back of his neck. What was ahead? The anticipation became an unbearable weight, drawing him forward against his better judgment. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness, cutting through the air like a knife. It was a low, guttural growl reverberating from somewhere deeper within the tunnels, echoing off the damp, cold walls. Lucas felt the ground shift beneath him, as if the very earth was awakening from an ancient slumber. Fear gripped him, and his instinct screamed at him to run. Yet, against that instinct, he found his feet moving, drawn toward the source of the sound like a moth to a flame. He turned a corner and entered a massive chamber, lit only by his flickering lantern. With the light casting long, wavering shadows, Lucas realized he was not alone. In the far corner of the cavernous room, something stirred, its silhouette dark against the jagged rocks. It moved with a predatory grace, its form blurring in and out of focus as if it were woven from shadows themselves. Pairs of glimmering eyes blinked back at him, and for a moment he was frozen. Caught between fight and flight, curiosity and terror, the creature stepped forward, revealing its true nature. It was massive, its frame twisted and grotesque, resembling a creature of nightmares more than anything recognizable. Jagged horns curled from its head, twisted features contorting into a semblance of fearsome intelligence. It was a demon, exactly as depicted in the murals, an embodiment of the darkness that had lain dormant below the town, summoning forth all of Lucas's primal fears. This was what the stories had warned about. This was evil personified. His breath caught in his throat, and his mind raced through 1,000 thoughts at once. He had believed in the tales of this demon's history, but standing face to face with it felt unreal, like watching a nightmare unfold in vivid detail. The demon prowled with an unsettling calm, its movements deliberate, almost taunting. It seemed to relish the fear radiating from Lucas, as if it thrived on the terror it evoked. The moment felt suspended in time, a grim tableau of hunter and prey. Behind the demon's eyes, Lucas saw a hunger, a desire that transcended the physical, an appetite for despair and chaos that made it an insatiable predator of the human spirit. And in that single, harrowing moment, Lucas realized this wasn't just a creature to be feared. It was a manifestation of every dark desire, every unfulfilled ambition, twisted into a form that could haunt the living. "Why do you disturb my slumber, boy?" The voice emerged like gravel rolling over stones, haunting and resonating within the cavern. It was not merely spoken, but laced with an echo that reverberated through Lucas's very soul. "You seek knowledge? You think yourself worthy?" His heart raced, and panic surged within him. Words failed him. He could only stare, horrified and captivated. What could he possibly say to something that represented his deepest fears? But the stillness of the chamber felt charged, as if the demon awaited a response, an admission of weakness that it could exploit. Lucas struggled to find his voice, to summon the strength to engage with the entity that loomed before him, a being so far beyond his comprehension. I seek the truth," he stammered finally, his voice trembling. "I want to know what happened here. What have you done to my town?" As soon as the words spilled from his lips, he felt both a surge of bravery and a foolishness that made his heart drop. Did he truly desire to know the answers? The demon's response was a low chuckle that echoed ominously around the chamber. "Truth," it mused, its voice oozing with condescension. "You mortals anchor yourselves to the past, as if it holds the power to save you. But you know nothing of power, child. You only scratch the surface of what lies beneath." As it spoke, shadows coalesced around it, a swirling dark mist that crept toward Lucas, wrapping around his ankles, attempting to pull him into its depths. In a moment of instinctual desperation, Lucas stepped back. The creature's amusement morphed into something darker, as if it relished his fear. "You have embraced the darkness by stepping foot into my domain. You cannot unlearn what you have discovered. Once you awaken the past, it will never let you go." Fear seized hold of him, constricting like a vice. Despite the terror, a flicker of defiance ignited within him. "I may not understand it all, but I won't let fear dictate my choices." Lucas shouted, the words empowering him. The spirit of a historian had taken root. A need to uncover the reality behind the legends, to confront evil rather than cower before it. The demon observed him with an inscrutable gaze, tilting its head slightly, a mix of intrigue and disdain evident in its expression. So courageous, yet so naive. We shall see how long that courage lasts when confronted with the depths of your own desperation. With those words, the demon lunged, its monstrous form hurtling toward him with inhuman speed. Lucas barely had time to react, a primal scream escaping his lips as he instinctively turned to run. The echo of the demon's malicious laughter thundered behind him, reverberating through the tunnel as he sprinted down the narrow passage. He could feel the heat of his pursuit, claws scraping against stone, urging him to navigate the darkness and disorienting twists with sheer instinct. He dashed through the tunnels, the light from his lantern flickering wildly as his terror amplified the shadows around him, distorting perceptions of space and time. With every turn, he caught fleeting glimpses of the horrors emblazoned in the murals that he had seen earlier, now seemingly alive, mocking his attempt to escape. The laughter of the demon echoed, mingling with the whispers of long-buried souls, and all the while, Lucas fought to push forward. What would it take to unveil the truth and overcome the very essence of fear itself? Would knowledge and history betray him? Or would they be the very tools that provided him a way out of this descent into madness? Lucas's heart raced, breathless with urgency, propelling him onward as he faced the bitter reality of the darkness that threatened to consume him completely. The echoes of the demon's laughter faded into an ominous silence, punctuated only by Lucas's frantic breaths as he raced through the tunnel. Trepidation gnawed at his insides, but fueling him was the relentless drive to survive and uncover the truth hidden in the shadows. Heart pounding, he navigated the treacherous bends, desperately trying to recall the path he'd taken into the depths of the abyss. Finally, he reached a narrow ledge that overlooked a yawning chasm. The ground beneath him was slippery with moisture, and even in his fear-fueled state, the drop into darkness made him hesitate. Behind him, he heard the demon's guttural growl reverberate through the tunnel, an icy reminder that he was not safe. Panic surged within him. There were limited options and time was running out. In a desperate bid to find a way back, he recalled the stories he had overheard in town. Tales told over flickering fires, warnings of ancient altars and sacrificial stones hidden within the depths. Perhaps that's what he needed, a way to counter the demon, to strike at the heart of the darkness and quell its fury. With renewed purpose, Lucas took a deep breath and prepared to leap across the chasm. He focused on the flickering light of his lantern, willing it to guide his way as he launched himself into the void. For an agonizing moment, he felt the pull of gravity and the rush of air around him. Time seemed to stretch impossibly until he landed with a thud on the other side, pain shooting up his legs. He quickly regained his balance, his mind racing with adrenaline. The tunnel before him narrowed into a passage lined with crude carvings that flickered in the lantern's glow, more depictions of battles, of sacrifices, of the darkness that had plagued these lands for centuries. Each step brought forth a sense of urgency as he pressed on, guided only by the instinct to find the altar, to confront whatever lay at the heart of the malevolence. Turning a corner, Lucas stumbled upon an expansive cavern bathed in dim light. The air was thick with an acrid scent, remnants of ancient rites that once occurred here. Yet, at its center, his gaze was drawn to a stone altar, a grim structure blackened over time, etched with symbols pulsating softly, as if alive with some ancient magic. This, he realized, must be where the rituals had taken place. This was the nexus of power and despair. Desperation gripped him as he approached the altar, searching frantically for any signs, any remnants of the incantations spoken by those who had come before him. His fingers brushed over the cold stone, and in that moment he felt a pulse, a resonance that echoed with the rhythm of his own heart. He then recalled snippets from the tome he had read earlier, the words that spoke of binding and invoking. An overwhelming sense of understanding washed over him. As he clutched the lantern tighter, Lucas shut his eyes, blocking the memories of the demon's terror. Inhaling deeply, he let the whispers of history guide him, trying to recall the rhythmic incantation he had deciphered. By the light that flickers and the shadows that dance, I call upon those before me, grant me strength to break this trance. With courage as my sword, I stand against the gaze of despair, awakened from repose, darkness, beware. Each word reverberated through the chamber, resonating with an energy that transformed the air around him. The symbols etched into the altar came alive, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath him, shaking with the force of the energy released from the altar. Lucas felt the power coursing through him, a heady elixir that burned in his veins. But just as hope surged within him, the darkness roared to life in a cacophony of rage. The demon's shadow poured from the recesses of the cavern, manifesting into its full, terrifying form. It surged toward him, its claws outstretched, hungry for vengeance against this audacious intruder. "I warned you, boy. You meddle in forces beyond your understanding," Its voice reverberated throughout the chamber, embodying the very essence of wrath. Lucas stood his ground, the thrum of the altar bolstering his resolve. "I will not be your prey. You've haunted this town for too long." Feeding on fear and despair, he shouted, channeling the strength of the ancient spirits, willing them to guide him. The altar flared brilliantly, illuminating the cavern as it filled with an overwhelming light that clashed against the darkness. Incantations echoed in the chamber, blurring the lines between past and present. A violent clash of spirits as history collided with reality. The demon halted, confusion momentarily flickering in its feral gaze. "This is your last chance," Lucas shouted, voice rising above the chaos. "Release your hold on this place. Be gone with the decay and desperation you've wrought." The dark entity recoiled slightly, its eyes narrowing as it belted out a guttural roar, a sound that shook the very walls of the tunnel. Shadows twisted around it, wrapping its limbs in darkness that shimmered like an angry sea. The force of the altar's magic waged war against the demon's malevolence, and with each shout of the incantation, Lucas felt the balance shift. Around him, the chamber resonated with the weight of centuries of anguish and the cries of those trapped in eternal despair. The past was fighting back, bridging the divide between worlds, pushing against the darkness that had claimed its dominion for far too long. "I command you to break free," Lucas yelled, extending his arms toward the demon as he channeled the energy from the altar into a cohesive force with unwavering determination. The vibrant light enveloped the cavern, bathing everything in a luminous glow that seemed to pierce through the chaotic shadows. With a final anguished howl, the demon writhed against the light, its form stretching and contorting as its essence battled against the grip of the ancient power emanating from the altar. The agony of centuries echoed in Lucas's ears, the cries of lost souls yearning for release, fueling his determination as he pressed on, refusing to relent. The light intensified, and with a spectacular explosive burst of energy, Lucas felt the last of his strength wane as he propelled the incantation one final time. "Return to the darkness from which you came. Lose yourself to the abyss." In that moment, the cavern ignited in a blaze of pure radiance, pulsating waves of energy cascading through the air. The demon's form shattered like glass, dissolving into a flurry of shadows that shrieked and screamed as they fragmented. The once mighty presence diminished, spiraling into nothingness, and with its dissolution, silence enveloped the room. Lucas fell to his knees, the burden of exhaustion washing over him. The altar's light flickered and dimmed, and he took a moment to gather himself, overwhelmed by the vastness of what had just transpired. Uncertainty lingered at the edges of his mind. Had he truly vanquished the darkness, or merely delayed its inevitable return? As the dust settled around him, he noticed that the oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by an air of clarity that felt refreshing against his skin. He knew the town would still bear scars from the darkness that had seeped into its roots, but perhaps they could begin to heal now that the demon no longer haunted their every shadow. With a heavy heart but newfound hope, Lucas looked upon the remnants of the altar, the history that had molded their world. He turned to leave the cavern, stepping into the unknown, ready to embrace the light of dawn and the promise of resurrection. A journey of trials that would still await him, but one that no longer bore the weight of shadow on his shoulders. Perhaps history could serve as a path to understanding, a way to arm themselves against the darkness that would always seek to return, something that now, through his courage, they might finally be able to confront together. As Lucas emerged from the depths of the tunnels, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, flooding the world with a gentle, golden light. The air felt crisp and fresh, the heavy fog of the night lifting as nature seemed to awaken from its own slumber. He shielded his eyes against the brightening sun, a stark contrast to the darkness he had just faced. Despite the exhilaration of survival and the weight of victory still clinging to him, a bittersweet heaviness settled in his chest. He had confronted the malevolence that had haunted Antioquia, but deep within him lingered questions. The echoes of the past remained unquiet, and the scars of history would take time to heal. Lucas made his way back through the unkempt trails leading up to the town, his thoughts a whirlwind of revelations. He recalled the stories told by the elders, the suffering of countless souls, and how generations had been tormented by an evil that thrived in darkness. Could he really unravel the strands of history and lead his community toward a brighter future? Or would the shadows always threaten to return? Upon reaching the familiar outskirts of Antioquia, Lucas was greeted by the sight of the town stirring to life. The soft sounds of clattering hooves and the lively chatter of villagers filled the air, chasing away the remnants of night. He paused for a moment, inhaling deeply, savoring the scent of fresh bread emanating from the bakery nearby. As he walked through the streets, he noticed the tension among the townspeople. Many wore expressions of dread and worry, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting the darkness to creep back into their lives at any moment. The sense of unease was palpable, and with a pang of empathy, Lucas knew he could not keep the truth hidden any longer. Gathering his strength, he made his way to the town square, where a small crowd had gathered around the well, their conversations hushed as they exchanged worried glances. Lucas climbed onto a wooden crate to get their attention, and with an unsteady voice he called out, "Friends, neighbors, I have returned from the tunnels, and I must share what I have learned." Eyes turned toward him, curiosity intertwining with apprehension. He took a deep breath, pushing aside his nervousness. "We have fought against the darkness that has haunted Antioquia for generations. I confronted the demon that fed on our fear, and though it was a fierce battle, I have driven it back into the depths." A murmur rippled through the crowd, disbelief etched on their faces. Old man Carlos stepped forward, skepticism written on his brow. "But how can we trust you, Lucas? We've faced countless tales and legends. How do we know this isn't another one to lead us astray?" Lucas met his gaze firmly, summoning the courage that had awakened within him. "Because I faced it, truly faced it, and I felt its power. The darkness is real, but so is the light we can bring into this town. It will not return if we stand together. We must confront the past, acknowledge our fears, and unite to break its hold on our lives." The crowd remained silent, doubts lingering amongst them like shadows. But then, a voice broke through, the gentle yet strong presence of Maria, a wise woman known for her deep understanding of history and the supernatural. "What Lucas speaks is true. I have felt the bonds of darkness binding our spirits. We must not ignore the weight of our past, nor the trials we've faced. If he has confronted the demon, we owe it to ourselves to believe in the possibility of freedom." With her words, the air shifted, and murmurs began to echo among the townsfolk. They turned to one another, contemplating the weight of her message. Lucas seized a moment. We can gather what remains of our history, the stories that shaped us, and ensure the darkness never returns. If we honor those who suffered, we breathe life into their memories, and with that, we build a future free of fear. Slowly, the crowd's demeanor shifted from skepticism to hope. One by one, they began to nod, the light of possibility igniting in their eyes. The foundation of fear began to crack under the weight of determination, and Lucas felt the surge of collective strength coursing through them. A power drawn not only from facing their darkest fears, but from the unity of spirit that emerged as they sought to confront their legacy. Over the next few weeks, Lucas embarked on a new mission with the townsfolk. They gathered in the town square under the broad ancient tree that had witnessed generations of their struggles. Each evening, they shared their stories, weaving a tapestry of history filled with courage and resolve. Elders spoke of the sacrifices made, while children listened wide-eyed, learning the lessons etched into their community's very fabric. As they delved deeper into their past, Lucas found himself becoming a bridge between shadows and light. He organized gatherings that encouraged open dialogue, allowing fears to be voiced, memories to be honored, and hope to flourish. The town began to engage with their history not as a haunted reminder, but as a foundation from which to rise. One evening, as they gathered around the flickering glow of lanterns, Lucas raised his voice, filled with fervor. Together, we can create a lineage of strength. We must cultivate our own light, turning the shadows of the past into guiding stars for our future. Let each story shared become a lantern, illuminating the way forward. The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement, voices rising with newfound conviction. Lucas felt a warm swell within him, a sense of belonging and purpose as he looked around at the faces of his friends and neighbors. They were united, a community now strengthened by shared vulnerabilities and their collective determination to break free from the chains of fear. As days turned into weeks, the bright light of their unity transformed the essence of Antioquia. While remnants of past fears lingered at the back of their minds, they no longer held their lives hostage. Hope blossomed in the cracked soil, nourished by the courage to face what lay behind them and embrace what lay ahead. In the heart of that resilience, Lucas found a new sense of self, not just as a historian or a bearer of truth, but as a protector of their future. The shadows may have once ruled the day, but now they dance around the edges, ever present yet powerless against the burgeoning light that had risen from the town and from within each of them. As Lucas gazed into the night sky, he whispered a silent promise to the spirits that lingered still, a vow that he and the people of Antioquia would never let darkness reign again. For they now understood the only way to ensure the light endured was to carry their history with them, embracing every shadow as a part of their journey toward an ever brighter dawn.